What if I told you that right now, buried hundreds of meters beneath the desert floor, there are entire cities, not villages, not bunkers, but fully operational underground cities, housing thousands of ballistic missiles pointed at American allies, American bases, and American assets across the Middle East? What if I told you that the United States military, with all its satellites, its stealth drones, its cyber capabilities, and its trillion-dollar defense budget, has never once successfully destroyed a single one of them? And what if the number of these cities isn't 5 or 10 or even 50, but hundreds? Stay with me, because what you're about to hear will permanently change how you see the balance of power in the most dangerous region on Earth. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the channel. Today, we are going underground, literally. We are going into the shadow world that Iran has spent 4 decades building beneath its mountains, beneath its deserts, beneath its cities. A world that American intelligence agencies have spent billions of dollars trying to map, trying to penetrate, and trying to understand. A world that, despite everything the most powerful military on Earth has thrown at the problem, remains largely intact, largely operational, and growing more dangerous with every passing year. This is not a story about a country with a few hidden weapons. This is a story about a nation that has engineered one of the most sophisticated underground military architectures in human history, and the West is only now beginning to grasp the full scale of what Iran has built. Let's begin with a number that should stop you cold. Iranian military commanders have publicly stated, and satellite imagery has partially confirmed, that Iran operates over 100 underground missile facilities, with some estimates from Western defense analysts placing the true number significantly higher. These are not simple storage depots. These are command and control centers, launch facilities, maintenance hubs, fueling stations, and living quarters for thousands of military personnel, all carved into solid rock, all reinforced against everything short of a direct nuclear strike, and many of them located deep enough that even America's most powerful bunker busting munitions cannot guarantee destruction. This is Iran's underground missile empire, and it is the single greatest strategic challenge the United States faces in the Middle East today. To understand how this happened, you have to go back to the 1980s. During the devastating 8-year war with Iraq, Iran learned a lesson that would define its entire military doctrine for the next 40 years. Above ground infrastructure is vulnerable. Saddam Hussein's Air Force bombed Iranian cities, Iranian factories, Iranian military bases with near impunity. Iran's surface forces took catastrophic losses. But the lesson Iran took from that horror was not merely to build stronger walls. It was to go deeper. It was to take everything that mattered and bury it so far underground that no conventional weapon could reach it. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC, became the architects of this vision, and they have been building it, expanding it, and perfecting it ever since. By the time the Iran-Iraq War ended in 1988, the blueprint was already being drawn. Iran began a construction program of unprecedented ambition, tunneling networks through the Zagros Mountains, through the rock formations beneath the central Iranian plateau, beneath the volcanic terrain near the country's borders. These were not amateur excavations. Iran employed some of the most sophisticated tunnel boring technology available, imported expertise from North Korea, a nation with its own legendary underground military infrastructure, and developed a domestic engineering capability that today rivals anything in the world. The IRGC's engineers did not just dig tunnels, they built cities. Here is what a typical Iranian underground missile facility actually looks like, based on declassified intelligence assessments and the rare footage that Iranian state media has deliberately released as a warning to adversaries. Imagine descending through a reinforced blast door wide enough to drive a military convoy through, set into the side of a mountain with no distinguishing features visible from the air. You travel downward through a sloping tunnel reinforced with concrete and steel, passing through multiple security checkpoints, each one a hardened airlock designed to contain the effects of a surface explosion. You descend further, not 50 meters, not 100, but potentially 200 to 500 meters below the surface. And then the tunnel opens. What you find at the bottom is not a warehouse. It is an operational military city. There are rows upon rows of ballistic missiles, Shahab variants, Ahmad precision guided missiles, Keter missiles with ranges exceeding 700 kilometers, Khorramshahr missiles capable of carrying multiple warheads. There are fuel storage facilities. There are electronic warfare suites. There are communications arrays hardened against electromagnetic pulse. There are barracks, kitchens, medical facilities, and power generation systems capable of sustaining operations for months without any connection to the surface. And there is a launch system because many of these facilities are not merely storage sites. They are designed to fire from underground with tunnel exits angled toward the sky, capable of launching salvos of ballistic missiles in rapid succession before any adversary can mount a response. This is the architecture that keeps American military planners awake at night, because the calculus of attacking these facilities is almost impossibly difficult. The United States military's most powerful conventional bunker-busting weapon is the GBU-57 massive ordnance penetrator, a 30,000-pound bomb designed specifically to destroy deeply buried hardened targets. It can penetrate approximately 60 meters of reinforced concrete before detonating. In ideal conditions against an ideal target, it is a devastating weapon. But against a facility buried 300 meters into solid granite, the physics simply do not work. The bomb runs out of penetrating power before it reaches the target. You would need multiple strikes on the exact same point, an extraordinarily difficult feat, even for the most precise military on Earth. And even then, there is no guarantee of destruction if the engineers design the internal geometry correctly with blast, deflecting angles, and redundant chambers. And here is where the story gets even more troubling for Western strategists, because Iran did not build these facilities as isolated points. They built them as a network, a dispersed, redundant, interconnected network of underground facilities spread across a country the size of Western Europe, connected by road tunnels, by command and control fiber optic systems, and by logistical supply chains that run entirely underground. Destroying one facility, even if you could, does not degrade the network. Iran's doctrine is specifically designed around the assumption that some facilities will be destroyed in any conflict, and the system continues to function. This is resilience engineering at a military scale that rivals anything NATO has built. The missiles housed in these underground cities represent a threat of staggering proportions. Iran's ballistic missile arsenal is the largest in the Middle East. It includes short-range tactical weapons, medium-range missiles capable of striking Israel, Saudi Arabia, and every American base in the Persian Gulf region, and intermediate-range systems that can reach deep into Europe. The precision of these weapons has increased dramatically over the past decade. Early Iranian ballistic missiles were notoriously inaccurate, capable of hitting a city but not a specific target within a city. Today, with domestic GPS equivalent guidance systems and increasingly sophisticated terminal seeker technology, Iranian missiles can strike within meters of their intended targets. When you combine that precision with the volume of missiles in these underground cities, thousands of weapons, you begin to understand why military analysts describe Iran's missile force as a genuine strategic deterrent. Consider what happened in January 2020 when Iran launched a ballistic missile strike against Ain al, Assad Air Base in Iraq following the killing of IRGC Commander Qasem Soleimani. Over a dozen ballistic missiles were fired from Iranian territory and struck the base with remarkable precision. This was not a demonstration from a desperate nation firing blindly. It was a calibrated message fired from facilities that the United States knew existed but could not neutralize, using missiles that the United States knew were being stockpiled but could not count. It was Iran demonstrating in real time that its underground missile network was operational, accurate, and immune to preemptive action. The United States did not strike back. And analysts who understood the full picture of what Iran had built underground knew exactly why. But the story of these underground cities is not only about the missiles themselves, it is about what they represent in Iran's broader strategic philosophy. Iran's leadership has never expected to match the United States in a conventional military confrontation. They have no illusions about the relative size and capability of American carrier strike groups, American stealth aircraft, American precision strike systems. What they have built instead is what military strategists call an asymmetric deterrent, a capability specifically designed not to defeat American military power in open battle, but to make the cost of attacking Iran so catastrophically high that no rational American president would order it. The underground missile cities are the foundation of that deterrent. They are Iran's insurance policy. They are the reason that, despite decades of maximum pressure, despite assassinations of key scientists, despite cyber attacks that delayed nuclear development, despite crippling economic sanctions, Iran has not been struck with the kind of sustained military campaign that was launched against Iraq in 1991 and 2003. Iranian commanders have been explicit about this. Senior IRGC officials have stated publicly that in the event of a major military confrontation with the United States or Israel, Iran would launch simultaneous strikes from multiple underground facilities in a coordinated salvo designed to overwhelm any missile defense system. They have specifically referenced American bases at Al Udeid in Qatar, in Bahrain, in Kuwait, in the UAE. They have referenced Israeli population centers. They have referenced the Gulf oil infrastructure upon which the global economy depends. This is not bluster for domestic consumption. It is a strategic communication, carefully calculated, telling adversaries exactly what the cost of conflict would be. And it is credible precisely because the world knows these missiles exist in hardened underground facilities that cannot simply be wiped out in a first strike. The intelligence challenge these facilities pose is worth dwelling on. American reconnaissance satellites pass over Iran with extraordinary frequency. The National Reconnaissance Office operates some of the most capable imaging systems ever built by human beings, capable of resolving objects less than 30 centimeters across from hundreds of miles in space. And yet the precise locations, depths, layouts, and capacities of Iran's underground missile network remain among the most closely held secrets in the world. Why? Because the Iranians designed these facilities specifically to defeat overhead reconnaissance. Construction activity was deliberately concealed and conducted at night under camouflage netting with excavated material dispersed over wide areas to disguise the volume of earth being moved. Tunnel entrances are hidden inside civilian infrastructure, inside mountains, inside ordinary-looking industrial facilities. The electromagnetic signatures that American signals intelligence relies on are suppressed through careful electronic discipline. Human intelligence, spies on the ground, is extremely difficult to run inside Iran after decades of brutal IRGC counterintelligence operations that have rolled up multiple CIA and Mossad networks. What American intelligence knows about these facilities is significant. What it does not know is more significant still. There is another dimension to this story that rarely gets discussed in mainstream coverage, and it is arguably the most alarming. Iran has not been building these underground capabilities alone. The relationship between Iran and North Korea in the realm of underground military construction goes back decades and involves an exchange of expertise, technology, and doctrine that has made both countries' subterranean military infrastructures far more capable than either could have developed in isolation. North Korea is arguably the world's most experienced nation in underground military construction. Its Korean People's Army has spent 70 years building one of the most extensive tunnel networks on Earth beneath the Korean peninsula. The techniques, the materials, the engineering doctrine that North Korea has developed have been shared with Iran through a military cooperation relationship that American intelligence has tracked with growing alarm. When you understand this exchange, you begin to understand why the scale and sophistication of Iran's underground missile cities has surprised Western analysts again and again. They were not building this alone. The picture becomes even more complex when you factor in the role of Iran's proxy network in this underground architecture. Hezbollah in Lebanon, operating under Iranian guidance and with Iranian resources, has constructed its own extensive tunnel network in southern Lebanon, a network that was partially exposed during the 2006 war with Israel, but has been rebuilt and dramatically expanded since. Hamas in Gaza, as the world saw in 2023, operated from a tunnel network of extraordinary scale and complexity beneath the Gaza Strip. These are not coincidences. They are expressions of a unified Iranian strategic doctrine that has been exported across the region. Go underground, make yourself invulnerable to air power, and use that invulnerability to project deterrence and conventional force. Iran's underground missile cities are the crown jewel of this doctrine, but they are part of a regional architecture of subterranean military power that stretches from Tehran to Beirut to Gaza and beyond. For American military planners, the question that haunts every strategic review of Iran is simple but terrifying in its implications. If conflict comes, what can actually be done about these facilities? The honest answer, based on everything that is publicly known, is troublingly limited. Conventional bunker busting munitions cannot reliably destroy the deepest facilities. Cruise missile strikes cannot penetrate reinforced mountain rock. Even the most optimistic assessments of America's conventional deep strike capability leave substantial doubt about the ability to neutralize more than a fraction of Iran's underground missile network in any realistic time frame. This is why, in classified discussions that occasionally surface through leaked documents and congressional testimony, American military planners have increasingly focused not on destroying these facilities, but on attempting to deter their use through the threat of catastrophic retaliation, essentially accepting that the missiles exist in places that cannot be reached and building strategy around that uncomfortable reality. Some analysts have argued that this represents a fundamental shift in the regional balance of power, one that has been building for decades, but has only recently reached a point where it meaningfully constrains American freedom of action in the Middle East. The United States has spent the better part of 30 years maintaining military dominance in the Persian Gulf through a combination of carrier strike groups, forward deployed air power, and precision strike capabilities that gave it the ability to neutralize almost any adversary in the region at will. Iran's underground missile empire directly challenges that dominance. Not by matching American power, Iran cannot do that, but by creating a credible cost that makes unconstrained American military action against Iran a genuinely dangerous proposition for any president who orders it. This is deterrence through survivability. It is ugly, it is deeply uncomfortable for Western strategists, and it is working. The construction continues. Satellite imagery and intelligence reporting indicate that Iran is actively expanding its underground missile infrastructure adding new facilities, deepening existing ones, extending tunnel networks, and integrating new missile systems into underground storage and launch configurations. The pace of construction has accelerated in recent years, coinciding with increased regional tensions and with Iran's deepening relationships with Russia and China, relationships that have brought new technology, new investment, and new strategic confidence. The underground missile cities that exist today are not the endpoint of Iran's ambition. They are a foundation, and that foundation is being built upon with urgency and purpose. What does all of this mean for you, for the world you live in, for the stability of a region that sits atop the most important energy reserves on the planet and at the crossroads of 3 continents? It means that the next major confrontation in the Middle East, if it comes, will not look like the wars of the 1990s or 2000s, where American air power swept aside adversaries' military capabilities in days. It will be fought in the shadow of an underground arsenal that cannot be neutralized from the air, that can strike back with thousands of precision-guided ballistic missiles against military bases and cities and oil infrastructure across a region of enormous global consequence. It will be fought against a country that has spent 40 years specifically preparing for this confrontation, that has buried its most powerful weapons beyond the reach of its adversaries, and that has built the entire architecture of its military deterrence around a single, unyielding principle: you can bomb our surface, but you cannot reach what is underground. The fortresses beneath Iran's soil are real. They are operational. They are growing, and they represent one of the most consequential and least understood strategic realities of our time. The missiles in those underground cities are not symbols. They are not political theater. They are loaded, fueled, targeted, and ready, maintained by tens of thousands of IRGC personnel in facilities that the most powerful military in human history has never penetrated. That is not a sentence that should be read quickly. It should sit with you, because it changes everything about how this next chapter of Middle Eastern history is going to be written, and about who, in the end, gets to write it. Stay informed. The next development in this story could come at any moment, and when it does, you will want to understand exactly what is at stake beneath the surface.